It's been a big deal recently. No kings or to know a king. Next on Table Talk. All right, welcome back, Table Talk. Hey, Nick, how you doing, man?
Good, Kyle. How's it going?
Did you have any idea what I meant by that opening?
I'm familiar. There are protests going on around the country and even here in Dothan.
Yeah.
Saw, what was it, WTVY? Or what's the other one? I can't remember. What's the
VHN's the other one.
Via WDHN. Something about, 150, 200 folks went up to up downtown.
Yeah, and there was, I was over in Fairhope this past weekend at a wedding, and people had to be rerouted to get to the wedding because of the protest in downtown Fairhope. And that's really that's when I heard about it. And it's called the No Kings protest, No Kings rally, or whatever, which was interesting considering that this past week, that Bobby talked about King. So it was really a full weekend of kings. But I wanted to start out a little bit different with this idea of kings, because I'm not sure that we have a total grasp on kings around our even world. I'm not sure we have a clue about the real kings in our world. So if you think of a king, what's the first in our world today, 2026, in our world, on the earth, planet Earth, when you think of a king, what's the first thing that pops into your mind?
That's alive?
Yes.
The guy in the UK?
Yeah.
Charles, right?
I think that's right. I think that's right.
Yeah.
And he has a son that will be the next king of the United Kingdom, and which incorporates, he's technically the king of, not only England, Wales,
most of Ireland, Scotland.
And then also,
oh no, that's not true actually. Wait, is
it Scotland?
Yes.
In Ireland, which one is in the UK? The tiny
North Ireland.
It still is in the UK.
Yeah.
Flip that. They have a tiny sliver of Ireland, and then Scotland, Wales, all the rest.
That's right. All right. The voice you just heard agreeing with Nick was Alan Gothard. Welcome, Alan. How are you?
Doing well.
All right. So we think about that, and technically, the monarchy of the United Kingdom is the one that we most likely associate with kings.
Mm-hmm.
And technically, I think Australia and places like that still come under the monarchy. Even Canada, to some extent, right?
That's right.
Is that right, Alan?
You have Queen.
They're part of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, the
I don't
Commonwealth.
know what that is, but it's a fun word.
Yes. And so that's a number of countries that have that. But what seems to be the line of thinking some of these No Kings rally is technically, when we think of kings in the United Kingdom, they technically don't have any power. They are more symbolic. They are more, they have no real authoritative legislative power, because we have the legislative body in the United Kingdom, in England or whatever, makes the rules. They have a prime minister. So I started wondering, who are the absolute monarchies out there? An absolute monarchy would be
Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, the old Russian.
Yes, Ivan the Terrible. You go all the way back to some of those in history. You got some pretty strong kings. But we actually have some absolute monarchies right here in 2026, just not places that we would go, really? That's an absolute monarchy?
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are in the Middle East.
Oh, duh.
Yeah.
Okay, because
So here's a list of absolute monarchies: Saudi Arabia, Brunei, Oman, Qatar, UAE, and Eswatini. Those are absolute monarchies, which means the king has sole power. Sole power.
Eswatini is a landlocked country in southern Africa. So I'll say you Googling it.
I have no idea.
I had to.
Not on that list?
Not on the absolute monarchy. But Kuwait shows up on the monarchies that have real influence. which is Morocco, Jordan, Kuwait, and Bahrain. Bahrain. Sorry, Bahrain. Bahrain. So interesting that the thing that we associated with the king mostly is more symbolic. King Charles and the kings of England, and I think we go back maybe the 1700s around that time when the kings in England and queens, depending on the lineage, were absolute. It's the closer we get to modern day stuff, you're doing away with the absolute monarchies and transitioning to more democratic countries or more republics and more of the symbolic type stuff. Like there's a look at this list. Besides UK, there's Spain, Netherlands, Belgium, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Japan, that all have more symbolic monarchies. But none of us ever think about them as absolute. No, in charge.
Some of them retain a level of like veto power, but it's 90% symbolic. Are you aware of the oldest unbroken, and we'll get to Jesus stuff here in a minute, I'm sure.
Maybe.
But maybe. Are you aware of the oldest unbroken royal lineage on the planet?
The
longest single royal family lengthwise.
It's not King Charles?
Mm-mm.
Oh.
It's the Japanese.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. Yeah.
The Yamato dynasty of the imperial house goes back unbroken, the phrasing here, longest unbroken continuous hereditary monarchy goes back to the year 660 BC.
Wow. And I don't know what, you may be Googling this, I don't know when Japan moved from absolute to symbolic.
After this little thing called World War II.
Well, I was trying to think back on some of the readings and stuff that I've read, watched movies and all that stuff. It felt like the emperor was informed, but I didn't know he was making all those major decisions of when to invade and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the 1800s when America kicked down the door and was like, "You're going to do democracy."
Okay. So his influence, we know his influence faded after World War II for sure.
Now it's purely symbolic.
Yeah. So it goes by. That's interesting. Did not know that. So, but I was interested because the 1700s, there was a lot of monarchies during that time. And so I was doing quick research before we got there. Most kings of the absolute monarchy during the, pre-1800s were not the nicest of people.
No.
Because if you have the absolute, we've always said absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Mm-hmm. That's
sort of been the saying. But so was there any good kings? Were there any good monarchs? And actually, Elizabeth I, 1500s, early 1500s to 1603, in England, was one of those leaders. This is during the Shakespearean days, by the way. Y'all heard of the guy named Shakespeare, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I think it's a much ado about nothing. But anyway, yeah. You get that, Alan?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Nick has no idea what I'm talking about.
I do.
Oh, you serious?
I've seen it.
Okay. But she stopped some wars, and she was more of a monarch of the people. She connected with the people. So just interesting. But everybody else during her contemporaries and earlier and later, they may have been good kings on some levels, but there still was oppression. There still was a lot of killing, and depending on who they were, there was some religious stuff going on too. Either tamping down Catholics or tamping down Protestants, depending on the kings during those days too. So, when I'm just not so sure when we use the word kings here, that we get a total grasp of what that is. But that technically is a term that we should have for Jesus. But we don't use it a lot. We talk about Jesus as Lord, Jesus as Savior. Where are we losing? And I think probably 2 years ago, I probably did. Well, what year was it? 23. It was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, there was a message that I talked about the king, being Jesus, being King Jesus. There's some songs written about it, but we don't use that phraseology a whole lot. So all this discussion to ask this question, Nick, why don't we use the name King Jesus more than we do?
I think we have, in American culture, we have a particular allergy to it. I don't think it's that original to us, actually. It's a pretty big deal. There's a reason that Caesar was never called king, because the pre-Roman Empire Romans, like in the Republic, still, like, calling yourself and trying to be Rex king was a death sentence. So I don't know that we've inherited that idea from the classical age, even though Caesar was just whatever. But I don't know. I think there's also something deeply human, especially like post 1800s human, about just a deep suspicion of anybody claiming to have the right to absolute authority.
Yep.
I think especially as we've gotten more and more modern, each of us have kind of been handed the right to say, I have the right to make these decisions for myself. That just wasn't the case in medieval life, when you were tied to the land and you did your father's job and that was your trade or whatever, right? I don't know. So I think modernity has kind of baptized that for us in an extent, where it's like, oh yes, every person has the right to dictate their own lives and what they do. I'm not critiquing that at all. I'm just saying, I think that kind of goes into why there's this, Jesus as Lord versus Jesus as King. That Lord word, I think, should bother us more than it does for the same reasons. But I think it's because it's not the word king.
Yeah.
It just doesn't get under our skin.
Yeah, and I guess if we paid attention during school, it was always, until he sang that song in Hamilton, the king was always the bad guy, right? But we love the song in Hamilton when the king sings. Have you heard that song?
Yeah, You'll Be Back. So it's a brokenhearted, manic, breakup song from Jonathan Groff. It's great.
Yeah,
great. But making fun of this other figure.
Yeah,
right.
And so if we learned anything at all, and most of us had to take a lot of history between first grade and high school, and graduation, and then if you went to college, you still had to at least do the 1 semester, 1 quarter of knowing our recent history as the United States, and it was all about the king. We don't want the king. We don't want a king here. We want to get away from the king. So our literal culture has always had that pushback from the very beginning. We don't want to do anything for the king. But it's not a biblical thing. I mean, we make it a cultural thing, but part of the, I don't want to use the allure, but part of the mystique of Scripture is it should be stand by itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just don't think we can discount. We shouldn't discount king, and we should understand the implications of that. But so if we go back to originally, when Jesus first appeared on the scene, it appeared that, and we're in Holy Week, so we're dropping this on a Maundy Thursday, and so it appeared when he entered Jerusalem that first Holy Week, that they were hailing him as king. Wasn't that what Palm Sunday was about? Right? Hosanna,
Son of David.
Yeah. I don't know if they didn't use the word king, but it resembled that idea, right?
Well, and they're also, I think we mentioned this a week or two ago, or I did. The age or the gap of time between Jesus and King David is 1,000 years, right? And I went back and I checked this. Then you have hundreds of years of the Davidic kings, his descendants, but like, I think it's the 600s is when they go into exile, right? Something like that. And so you have all these Israelite people looking back on the quote unquote good old days on this real figure, King David, but almost like King Arthur figure in the sense of like, I don't even know that they know what I think if you were like a CNN reporter and you stopped and pressed somebody in this crowd, what exactly do you mean by that word king? What do you want out of this? I don't know if you're going to get a consensus even in that crowd. And if you do, it's definitely not what Jesus means when he claims it. Just because it's this, especially that word Hosanna, come save us, like, hey, if you're who you say you are, you can come and fix all my problems, right? And we can talk more about this, I'm sure we will, but I think one of the reasons that these same folks wind up crucifying him is because he just says, I'm not going to fit in your box. I'm not going to meet your expectations. And I'm parroting some last sermon stuff for me, but like, Jesus just wasn't that interested in showing up and tailoring himself to what they wanted. It's like, oh no, I'm a king. That means you meet me on my terms, not the other way around.
So what are ways that we sort of today trying to force in our world, 2026? What ways do we try to make Jesus the kind of king that we want to that we would say, oh, that's the kind of king I want, right? We know with the first Holy Week people, we know what they wanted: out from Roman control, their own rule, get all the Roman soldiers out,
none of which are bad things, by
right?
the way, I'm not critiquing that,
Right?
But I'm just saying they're coming to Jesus, asking for a king, but they have their own. You're actually here to meet my agenda, right? That's just not how you walk in the room. I don't care. I love The West Wing. It's an old TV show from the 2000s. It's Lord Martin Sheen as the U.S. president. There's a scene where it's like, hey, actually, I don't care who you are, what you think about me. When the U.S. president walks in the door, nobody sits, right? The power of the office means, even of a president, means I demand your respect and you meet me on my terms. I think that it's really subtle the ways that we flip that script on Jesus a lot. I'm not trying to be controversial. There's a reason nobody in this church knows much about my political stances. I think it is an absurd effort to try to map Jesus to an American political party. I think that is, if you give it 30 seconds of thought, saying that Jesus is this thing or this thing in our context, it's just not. It's just absurd on its face. But we take it and we mold him into the image of what we believe is right. And then we go looking in the scriptures to say, well, you obviously believe what I believe is right, because here, and here, not realizing every other person, every other party is doing the exact same thing. Saying, Jesus, you fit in our box, not the other way around. And I'm not taking a swipe at anybody in particular with that. I'm simply highlighting the trend that there are committed Christians who hold to every political belief they have for reasons that they believe are rooted in Christ. At some point, you got to reckon with the fact that really, really, really intelligent people are doing that on every side of an issue.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to be wrong, or maybe what we're doing is wrong, and trying to make him fit our box instead of the other way around.
Yep. That tracks, and that tracks with, I think, the original ministry of Jesus. Then he didn't identify with any of the popular people.
No,
I mean, wherever he didn't identify with either side.
Nobody but John the Baptist, who actually said, no, you don't identify with me, I identify with you, right? To actually a pretty big amount of friction. He must increase while I must decrease. John was kind of the only person of quote unquote political weight. I mean, his death is a political hit. Herod, his wife, his daughter, and all that schemed to get his enemy, in John's head, winds up on a platter because of this political person feels critiqued. That's somebody with political weight, right? But even that person, the only person that Jesus identifies with, did not say, Jesus, you're on my team, said, I am on yours. It's the other way around.
Yep. So what does it look like today for us practically speaking, to say, Jesus is my king? What does that look like today? Because we're going to be skewed no matter what, truthfully, with our thinking about what a king is. But if we go back and look at Jesus's life, death, resurrection, post-resurrection, we have a pretty good picture of who Jesus was when he lived on this earth. We know how he treated people. But for us to submit, because as a king, the word should gravitate to something about absoluteness, right? Because that's what a king is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially in that context.
Yeah.
Because who is the king, if you want to argue it as who is the person that in any situation has final political say, that cannot be revoked. The U.S. president can be censured, investigated, impeached by another body of power that he does not have full say over. Right? That's not a king, unless he starts doing things that, in defiance of that, that's a different conversation. But that's why the U.S. president can't declare war on his own. The only person who had that kind of authority was Caesar, right? And you can argue that, who was it? The Pontius Pilate would have been the equivalent of the this is where the buck stops, in absolute power and authority. I think that that's what that would have looked like, personally, is that absolute. Nobody really has any right to regulate what I do. I'm in charge. You're not. Deal with it. I don't know. I think, what could that look like? I'm sorry. Rephrase your question again.
Yeah. Then what does it look like today for us to say, okay, Jesus is my king?
Okay.
I follow King Jesus.
I think it has a lot to do with what our non-negotiables are. For example, I'm not recommending this. It's not baptized, but one of my favorite songs for a really long time, it was an earworm when I was younger. It was Hold On Loosely by 38 Special. I held that phrasing.
I know.
Right?
But don't let go.
Hold on loosely to these things. Don't let go of them. Be tenacious with them. Fight for it. But if you cling too tightly to this thing that isn't actually what you're supposed to be holding on to, you're going to lose it all. Right?
Yep.
I know it sounds silly, but I think that a lot of things where we get messed up with okay, what does it mean to follow Jesus? We start making things non-negotiables without really wrestling with if he's doing the same thing. So for example, you know what? Let's make this the controversial episode. Everything going on with Iran right now, right? I'm not going to wade into a political quagmire, but I think that if your non-negotiable is anything but human life and valuing image bearers of Jesus, and that's not the first thing, we can have conversations about what does it look like to deal with Middle East politics, right? But if you're a proponent for this conflict but have no heart for the image bearers of God that he loves that are casualties, I don't know how you can say that you're holding on to the thing that he held on to when those are the people that he died for. I'm not saying that should push you a certain direction. I'm simply saying if the very first non-negotiable is we love the people that Jesus loves, but there's no internal emotional response to seeing suffering, I don't know that we can say that we agree with him. There are good, righteous Christian people, especially in the military, who have good reason to make the arguments that they make. I'm not an expert on Middle East politics. I'm just saying what is at the top of our list of the things that are of greatest value. If it's social media, sorry, bud, that's an absurd statement. Social media, as our lovely friend Juan Sparrow can attest to, is a tool for kingdom use. It serves Jesus. We're not out here crafting an image because that's the in and of itself. It is secondary to other targets and goals, right? I know a lot of people who would if you really pressed them, would put social media much higher on a list versus other non-negotiables. Like, well, this is the thing that Matt values most, is maintaining this image or putting this virtue of myself out there. It's like, I just don't, that doesn't map to Jesus in my head. And we're not that far off from conversations about idols, right? Because an idol is that which has your ultimate allegiance, and that's the non-negotiable. So every person has to define it separately. But if Jesus says, I want that part of you, or I want to have say over this decision or this thing here, and internally we say no, we are no longer under his full authority because we've taken ourselves out of it.
And which to your point earlier, technically King and Lord are pretty interchangeable.
The reason I say that I think Lord should bother us more is Lord, as I understand it, was actually that, and the way that Paul uses it is like noble, Lord, in charge, all that stuff. But Lord is what you called your master if you were a slave.
Correct.
And what did Paul identify himself as more than anything else at the beginning of every letter? I am a slave or a servant of Jesus Christ. In the Greek, by the way, those words are one and the same. And I'm not swinging big for slavery. I'm just saying it meant a very different thing in the ancient world than it did in the context that we consider. It wasn't racial. It was a very different thing.
I mean, we're called,
not a good thing.
The New Testament calls us followers of Christ, followers of the way, but the word slave to Christ is the predominant word.
It is, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who lives, but Christ who lives in me.
Yeah.
Just, you're going to find this everywhere. I'm not my own. I don't belong.
Yeah.
You know, JD Walt, you know, the Wake Up Call.
Yeah.
Great podcast. You should listen to it for our friends at Seedbed. The prayer that it starts with every day has some phrasing of, Jesus, I belong to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't belong to myself.
Right.
And I...
harkens back to some of the Middle Ages stuff about kings and vassals and all that, serfs and vassals, all that stuff.
At the end of the day, I'm not my own. I don't have the final say.
Yeah.
And I think it's...
And we talk around it a lot in the church. We talk around it without technically not identifying, Jesus is king, and we are subservient. We are under the king's authority. We talk around it a lot. We just don't probably put the words on it and the harshness of using the word king. We use Lord, but I think Lord is softened probably too much.
Well, the good Lord, I just know how many... It is rare for us to hear the word Lord and not think about God first, because, the good Lord,
That's
especially like just in common media. I think the first time I ever encountered the word Lord, not in a religious context, was Shrek, Lord Farquaad.
Yeah,
that was weird.
Yeah.
And that's not entirely a figure you're supposed to take seriously, right?
No.
Right.
No.
I don't know, man. I guess what I'm saying is, if we are willing and actually able to take the New Testament on its own terms, when it talks about the relationship between us and Jesus, yes, we are sons and daughters of God. Yes, we are friends of God. Yes, we are the bride of Christ, and there is a loving relationship there. But before we get to any of that, you start with, I am a servant of Jesus. And those other things flourish out of that identity is, I am not my own. I don't have to say what goes here.
Yeah, we use the word servant a whole lot more than we use slave.
Which would be...
in our context, it's better.
Especially with how that word slave lands in modern North American ears.
Yeah.
Believe me, I get it. And I think servant really does get you a good way there, especially for people who have like watched Downton Abbey or whatever, where, okay, at the end of the day, none of those people ran their own lives. That's just how it is, right? But even then, if we're thinking like
the vast majority of the world actually does not run their own lives.
No, but because we have this American gospel of, you define your own everything, your own purpose, your own meaning, your own life path, your own boom, boom, boom. It's just a harder pill to swallow. And I don't think it's uniquely American. I just think we are the ones who have really perfected it in that sense.
Yeah.
We did not invent firearms, but I believe that the Americans have taken firearms and made them their own in that sense, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I would think that's, nobody else in the world has the same kind of conversations about guns that we do in America, right? It just means a different thing to us than it does to other people. Again, not making any political statements simply saying we have to reckon with the way that these words land in our ears in a way that not only isn't universal for Christians in Mozambique or the Himalayas or Sweden. Like they're just hearing these things differently, let alone the people that Jesus actually talked to. It's our job to actually get the meaning that landed with them, not take it and make it work to our own meanings and headlines. Because I don't know about you. Maybe you actually experienced this. I was always warned, especially in college and seminary, of the preachers out there who preached with a newspaper in their hand. And it was all about prophecies and whatever. It's like, don't be that guy. I never actually experienced that, but I know that was a thing back in like the 50s and 60s, right? Where it was much more about like, the pulpit was about responding to current events and bringing the Bible into it versus actually my job is to lead you on a journey into the scriptures and let's find what Jesus has for us there.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a different priority. Are you using the Bible as ammo to shoot at something else, or are you journeying into it saying, I am subservient to the God that gave this to me? You just can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
Does that mean we can't go to it to learn and find principles and ideals that help us walk through things in the public square? We absolutely can do that. But that is a razor thin line of, I want to wrestle faithfully with the world around us and modern issues like sexuality and AI and all these other things. Jesus doesn't talk about should a 12-year-old have an iPhone. But there's a lot in there about protecting young people and keeping them from things that are hunting them spiritually. It's just not the same thing as go find a verse that you think applies to a modern issue, pull it and say, boom, we're done. I just don't think we're willing to wrestle with the fact that's actually a very intellectually lazy way of existing, personally.
All right. We're going to get the voice off camera to see if he has anything. Alan, you've been listening for a while.
Yes, sir.
And we finally took a breath. So when you think about King Jesus, anything pop in your mind, or is it still?
You know, it's something that me and my cousin Bailey have actually talked about a lot. He's a very, very scholarly religious person. He thinks he wants to go to seminary, but he's a very shy guy. But he's the first person who I ever had identify to me in words in person say, I am a monarchist for King Jesus. Talking about politics.
Yeah.
It's exactly the words that he uses. I am a monarchist for King Jesus. He is the perfect embodiment of that in the modern day. It's just kind of crazy how he's been saying that for years, and now you ask me where I see that in the modern day, and verbatim is what it comes out of his mouth.
Yeah. And the king that we identify as Jesus is a king that he ruled. He has absolute power, but we don't think of Jesus as being corrupted absolutely, but loving absolutely. So absolute power, but absolute love. And that's the difference that we see in the king that we serve, and the king that and here's the deal. We have a number of people who think they know what a king does. They think they know what a king is doing and what a king is thinking in our world today, and they're putting things out there about alleged kings in our world today. But we have a king that we can know.
Mm-hmm.
He's already given us all we need to know about our king, and we honor that, we study that, we memorize, and we experience the king that we know. So our challenge is not to say no to kings, but to know the king. And that king was resurrected on Easter Day, and that changed everything. That's coming up. We celebrate it, And then because he is the king that has been resurrected, he is the one that has absolute power and chose to love absolutely as well. So thank you guys for hanging in there with us today. Have a great weekend. When this podcast drops, we will have a Good Friday service at Covenant at 6:00. And my producers are around here. We actually are live streaming our Good Friday service. So we're live streaming that. It is a service of darkness. So when you see a dark screen, don't be scared. We're still there. Just listen. So you'll have something.
Kind of the point, right? Hold on until the light comes, until we can see clearly.
Yeah. Easter morning, 2 services, 8:30 and 9:55. If I was you listening to this and you want to avoid a little bit of traffic, I'm suggesting come a little earlier, maybe 8:15.
I would also suggest parking somewhere else. Like,
if you park right in front of the sanctuary at Covenant, it'd take a little while to get out. But if you pull around to the back or something like that,
and you can sneak out the back and get over to 84.
I would suggest not parking across the street at Assembly of God.
No,
you don't want to cross across the street.
We love them. You're just not going to get out of there either.
So it will be an interesting morning between us and First Assembly, and I know Pastor Mark Benson will have a great day for y'all as well. Had new parking over there, by the way. Did you notice that?
Oh, is it done?
Yeah, I think they'll be parking on the new parking lot.
Cool.
So that'd be awesome. And wherever you go, wherever you're listening to, so thank you again for being a part of us. We'll be online on Easter morning, Good Friday. If you want to join us, invite somebody. Invite them to join us on our online. Invite them to be on campus with us as well every Sunday, 8:30, 9:55. Godspeed. Which is that?
Godspeed.
Where's Goodspeed from? Oh, that was from a movie. Okay. Oh, there's a guy named Goodspeed, I think. So, anyway, blessings, y'all. Happy Easter.